Oh, Ross. Hi, Ross and Tanya and and Matthew.
So, councillors, if I can just very quick intro, and Ross will step you through this. Got Andrew Guthrie here as well around the city centre program. But just to be clear, what you're looking at here, you've obviously quite recently adopted the LTP program, including the 10-year forward CapEx program. The bulk of this item is just business as usual. It's talking about the follow-on impacts from the year-end process, where across the family, staff need to look at projects that haven't been fully completed in the last financial year, and therefore it's necessary simply to adjust our forward schedules to roll over some of those projects where it's appropriate and reflect those in a revised budget for the next 1 to 2 years. So that was the first point I really just wanted to make, is that's what we're focused on here. It's just a natural part of the year-end process. Take stock where we're at on certain projects, what money needs to be rolled forward to adjust our budgets. The second thing I wanted to emphasise is the team here and many others have worked extremely hard with local boards. So this has involved a reasonably significant amount of projects in the local space. It's been worked very hard over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and look, I'd like to thank the staff. I think evidence of the fact that it's been a good discussion is there aren't any local boards here today with any particular axe to grind, and indeed the chair did mention that there was one chair who wanted to come along and say well done. So just to give you the assurance that that channel and those conversations have been worked very hard in preparing these papers. So Ross, if you want to just step through.
Okay, thank you. So the monthly budget update report is quite a large one this month, so we've just got a few slides here that myself and Andrew Guthrie will talk through, just to make it a bit easier to understand the content that's there. So the report itself, there's really 3 parts to it. The first part is the business as usual year-end budget timing changes that Matthew talked about. So these adjustments, they happen every year. They're largely timing changes, predominantly CapEx, but there's also some small OpEx timing changes as well. It is business as usual. It's something that happens every year, but the LTP did make things a little bit different. So within the council parent, typically we've had large project lists, but then delivery hasn't lived up to delivering all those projects, so things get carried forward, and that's built up quite a bit of a bow wave. The LTP was in a bit of a reset when all of the funding levels were looked at again, so that puts some of those projects at risk, particularly in the local space. So we anticipated that in the LTP. We looked at what projects were in flight, things that were underway, or projects that were ready to go, and we anticipated there'd be a need for about 60 million of projects that needed to be carried forward out of the current year, predominantly local board projects. Now that the numbers are in, now we've got the final year-end results, the final number of projects in that category is 65 million, of which it's for the 65 million for the council parent in total, of which 47 relate to local boards. So essentially, we've made enough financial provision in the first few years of the long-term plan to accommodate carrying forward all of the local board projects that are in flight. We've got the build-up expectations that those projects will be delivered in a timely manner. So things are generally in this category timing changes. There are some exceptions, and the city centre projects that we'll talk about later is probably the key exception there. Also in the report there's CCO movements, CCO CapEx timing changes, and a few CCO OpEx timing changes are mentioned. There's also a recommendation there around a reclassification for ATEED for the digital platform, just transferring a request to reclassify some operating expenditure as capital expenditure. So recommendations A to D are really in that sort of year-end budget update timing changes bit. The rest of the report covers 2 other items. So one is the city centre projects, that Andrew Guthrie will talk about shortly, which are generally associated with the city centre targeted rate. And then the last item relates to Auckland Transport's budget changes. So there was obviously a lot of movements later in the piece in developing the long-term plan. The numbers that Auckland Transport submitted to us, they've changed and updated since then. Those numbers have already come through and been incorporated into the Auckland Transport Statement of Intent. What they are is effectively changes in revenue and expenditure, so both have moved in step, but still working to the same bottom line. So this is just asking you to formally update the group's budgets to reflect those adjustments. So just looking at the sort of total CapEx delivery for the council parent, this is showing the trend. So the green bars are the last 3 years, and then the blue and the red is what's happening for the next 3 years. So you can see there that the year just gone for the 14-15 financial year, in the council parent we delivered 50 million more projects than in the past, and then the target for next financial year, year one of the LTP, is another 50 million. So we've got a target of just over 500 million of projects to be delivered for the parent, much more than we've done in the past. And the intention is to have a list of capital projects that is both deliverable and fundable, so that we deliver to the community pretty much what we say we're going to deliver. So then we've got the 65 million comes in across the next first 5 years of the long-term plan, the bulk of it hitting years 2 and 3, and there's some small amounts in the outer years. So just in terms of the timing there, what we can't do is just accommodate all of those projects that didn't get delivered this year into year one of the LTP, plus everything that was already there. There needs to be, because the 500 million is already a stretch target, there needs to be a bit of smoothing the program out over the 3 years. But what that means, so what we've done is looked at all of the individual projects and said when are individual projects likely to be delivered, and there's naturally lots of timing changes that occur just naturally. So we've reviewed all that and worked through those schedules with the local boards, and the local boards haven't raised any issues. So my last slide just shows what's happened for year one of the LTP, the current financial year, the 15-16 year. This is the net movement in the CapEx budget for each of the local boards. So most of the local boards have actually got slightly more capital expenditure planned for this year than they had previously, with 3 exceptions. And those exceptions are for good reasons. So there's the Henderson Massey local board, where there's a timing change there for the Westgate Town Centre and the developments there. Similarly, in Upper Harbour, the Albany Pool is going to happen a little bit later. And the Wairau local board, the Pioneer, the Allan Melville and Pioneer Women's Hall is going to occur. So those 3 projects, more of the spend will happen in the 16-17 year. So all of the boards have got, delivered either a little bit more than we had planned in year one, or they're going to have big projects delivered in year 2, and that's why they're down in that year. So with that, I'll pass across to Andrew to talk about the city centre integration projects.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ross. Is there a... This one, can you put it up?
Yep.
Great, thank you everybody. So this will be fairly brief. As noted in the report that was provided, that there is proposed that there's a net reduction in capital expenditure for the city centre projects of about $8.7 million in the LTP period. This, and we'll come to why, but there's a number of reasons, including projects which have been reprioritised and deferred out of the period, and also an increase in city centre targeted rate funding contribution to those projects as opposed to general rate. And then the second element of this is that there's an increase in operational expenditure proposed for the LTP, which is fully funded by city centre targeted rate. And if I could take you to slide here. The two slides which are provided up front in this report, I'm not going to go into any detail, but what we wanted to demonstrate is that there's through the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board, which advises on the expenditure of the city centre targeted rate and all matters city centre, there's a fairly robust process being developed around the evaluation of current and potential projects and expenditure in the city centre for both capital works and operational projects. We've been through the LTP list and outstanding projects and gone through a prioritisation process, and over that period of time, what the advisory board has endorsed is some recommendations, some changes to the LTP. So on this list here of note, there's proposed an increased allocation of targeted rate funding of $7.4 million to projects such as the Beach Road Cycleway, Freiburg Square and Myers Park Stage 2. And I'll come to some numbers in a minute. In addition, there's proposed a new project to be fully funded from City Centre targeted rate, which is about enhancing the Auckland Transport cycle network along Karangahape Road, so it's broadening it to improve the public amenity in those spaces. There's a number of changes highlighted through the LTP around the timing, so again, re-looking at the timing and the interdependencies with various projects. There are some timing changes for budget allocation. And then through the reprioritisation process, we've looked at some of the projects with the advisory board around deferral or deletion of minor streetscape projects which have been carried forward from a previous time, and for a number of reasons, including some uncertainty around projects such as the effects of the CRL, and if you look at, there was a project there for Beresford Square. We've considered it appropriate that we defer that as a project until more is known around the Sea Rail Link effects in that area. And so there has been a reduction of $14.7 million proposed through the LTP. The next sheet is a capture from the more detailed pack for you of the city centre capital projects, and showing on the right hand side there the allocation to targeted rate for those projects. And then the following slide or sheet picks up the variances in there. And so just in very broad terms, and picking up on the bullet points that I've talked to previously, there's a number of projects which are recommended for deletion or deferral in the yellow there. There's the bulk of the projects, there is no change from the LTP. There are some where there is zero net effect, but the timing of some of the expenditure is highlighted there, the blue projects. And then the last tranche of projects there is showing where the advisory board is recommending additional allocation of targeted rate for either existing or new projects. So again, 100% funded through the targeted rate as opposed to a general rate. The final slide there is around projects which are new to the LTP, and they are operational expenditure as a broad category, and these are initiatives in the city centre which the advisory board has endorsed as being appropriate for allocation of city centre targeted rate, 100%, and they are things like the destination marketing in the area, thereabouts, a contribution towards the wayfinding signage improvements in the city centre. There's some work around how do we activate and improve the amenity in the city centre during this period of transformation ahead of us. All areas of work which are considered to be of significant benefit directly within the city centre to businesses, residents and visitors.
And so those are proposed as additions to the LTP, fully funded through city centre targeted rate. That's me, so happy to take any questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, questions, councillors? Is this one both? Both, Councillor Cashmore.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, team. So the city centre targeted rate has a variance at the end of the LTP period of basically 2.5 million. So the actual targeted rate will probably remain the same. No need for it to increase.
There's no intent to increase the targeted rate levy, no.
Okay,
So there is a projected surplus of targeted rate currently through the 10-year period. This is how do we spend it.
Cool, thank you. And my other question is to you, Ross. So last year we had the CapEx delivery of 92% in the annual report. So you project through to the next 3 years. You're talking here in your pictorial. Those figures they've been steadily improving. Are we accounting for a continued steady delivery of CapEx delivery per budget? Is what it's showing here?
Yes, so going forward into the LTP, we're not projecting, we're not anticipating that we won't deliver what we say we're going to do. What we're planning to do is what we're budgeting for. There's no, other than these carry forwards coming in, there's no other timing adjustments built in.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Casey.
CCTR, city centre.
CCTR, city centre targeted rate.
Evaluation criteria, which is what I'm looking for. The group itself is called the City Centre.
So it's the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board.
Advisory Board.
And
right.
Councillor Lee is the elected representative on that board.
That was my question. So Councillor Lee is represented on there. Because I've never been along to it, this is a tangential question which you can answer me offline, but I was reading through all your evaluation criteria about streetscapes and making it a welcoming, better place to live. And I'm really concerned about defensive architecture, and I'm concerned that 3 businesses have already installed drenchers for the homeless. So I'd like some comment back, not now, but by return, about whether you are looking into the whole area of defensive architecture. And I want to know from you, and I also want to know what you're going to do about the drenchers. Because I can't seem to get anybody to do anything. I just wanted to say it's an issue, and I think it's in your court now that I've seen your evaluation, and I'd like to talk to you about it. In fact, I probably would like to come along to one of your meetings and formally talk to you about it. So that's good. Second question is really about the long list of projects, capital projects. I'm looking at our page 13. I'm halfway down where it says Town Centre Renewal Mount Albert,